Do you see that guy over there? Yuck, that outfit is so last patch. Like, gross. What a loser. Hello there world, I'm the Talking Mausoleum, and as I'm sure you know, with patch 1.07 FromSoft buffed the Poise on pretty much all armor in Elden Ring. And so fast PvP is the question becomes, what are the new best armor pieces to get our Poise going? The Poise value alone isn't really enough to tell us that, since having a lot of Poise is only really of value if your outfit doesn't also weigh the equivalent of the line at an all-you-can-eat buffet. Introducing Poise Weight Ratio. Simply dividing an armor's Poise by its weight will give us a number of how much Poise we get for every single weight point, a number that we can then compare to other armor pieces. So what is the new best Poise Weight Ratio armor combination post patch 1.07, you ask? Well, here it is. Alright, that didn't do us much good. Looks like we have to dig a little deeper. Having a good ratio is fine and all, but we also need to look at the overall Poise breakpoints we're actually trying to achieve. And since patch 1.07 didn't only buff armor Poise, but also the Poise damage weapons do, overall we have to aim a little higher than before. Before we delve into specific armor combinations though, let's first get an overview of the best PWR armor pieces for each category and find out which pieces are here to stay and which ones must sashay away. I didn't look at all the armor pieces for the lower entries, instead just making sure that the top 10 of each category is reliable. The other armor pieces further down on the list are more for reference. Alright, so let's start off with the chest pieces. Right off the bat we can sort all chest pieces into two categories. Those that can reach a ratio of 2 or higher and those who can't. This is nice because you can kinda eyeball this when making your build if you don't wanna whip out a spreadsheet every time you make a new character. But of course I did just that. So as we've seen, in first place we have the squishy yet stylish aristocrat garb with an impressive ratio of 2.448. It basically weighs nothing, but also only gives us 12 Poise, which unfortunately makes it pretty useless since we'd have to stack a bunch of the heaviest armor pieces in our other slots to even get close to any practical breakpoints. And the same is true for its altered version and the Battle Mage robe coming in closely behind on second place. The altered version of the fingerprint chest piece takes the number 3 spot with its 24 Poise for 10 weight, netting us a clean ratio of 2.4. This is the first of multiple instances where the altered version of an armor piece outperforms its unaltered variant. The Mausoleum Knight set, for example, in general always does just slightly better than all the other Knight sets like Redmane or Lindell, while the Halictree Knight set will always do worse than those. The altered version of the Mausoleum chest piece, however, is especially efficient, bringing it in at 4th place. Dropping down into the 2.2 range, the tree and ice surcoats might give you a little less Poise than the other surcoats overall, but at a better ratio of 2.282. which has them tied for 5th place. Next we have a shared 6th spot between the Knights, Fingerprints and Mausoleum Surcoat chest pieces. Those already had the exact same values pre-patch 1.07 and not much has changed here. Gideon's altered pajamas come in at number 7 with 21 Poise for 9.3 weight. The Omen Killer robe lands the 8th place, and the altered version of the various Knights chest pieces, minus Mausoleums and Halictrees of course, are just a little heavier than the Fingerprint or regular Knights chest piece with 10.8 instead of 10.6 weight for the same 24 Poise, landing them in 9th place. And on the last spot of our top 10, the Lord of Blood's robe comes in with an equally daring and dashing fashion statement. So in this top 10 we have a bunch of stuff that gets us around 24 Poise, but depending on the breakpoint we will be going for, this isn't always going to be enough. The first higher Poise armor on this list is the Crucible chest piece with 33 Poise. The less efficient altered version drops 2 Poise and some weight. Beyond that there are a number of different chest armors in the 2.0x ratio range, with the next best step up being the 3 Sentinels chest piece with 39 Poise for 18.9 weight. All the even heavier chest pieces like Veterans or Bullgoats make up the bottom of this list. We will still sometimes have to use them for our higher Poise breakpoints, but in general want to avoid them if we can, as they are way less efficient. Next up are leg pieces. Once more, the ratio we're looking for a good piece of leg is 2 and above. And also once more, the aristocrat boots take the number 1 spot, which is nice for all them wandering nobles out there, but again only semi-useful for us if we're trying to go for relevant poise breakpoints. The Godskin Noble leg piece sneaks in on 2nd place alongside the Battle Mage leg wraps. And like was the case with the chest pieces, the first step up in poise is made by the Fingerprint, Knight and Mausoleum leg pieces. That's the Mausoleum greaves that belong to the surcoat, not the respective Knight set. Before we get to some higher poise leg armor, the Vagabond greaves sneak in for a surprise 4th place with just a little less poise and weight. Rounding out the top 5 then are the Crucible greaves with 20 poise for 9.2 weight, once more making them the most efficient heavier armor in this category. The rest of the top 10 is mostly lighter weight stuff like the Warrior greaves, Traveling Maiden boots, Omen Killer boots or the All-Knowing leg piece. The 7th and 9th spot with the Mausoleum Knight and Scaled greaves respectively give us at least some more poise however. Other than that, all the higher poise leg pieces fall below our desired PWR of 2+, with the Tree Sentinel being among the most efficient and Bullgoats once more making up the bottom of this list. Again, we'll still have to use some of these armor pieces for higher poise breakpoints sometimes, but in general we'll try to make it work with the Crucible greaves that are just way more efficient. Now let's look at our headwear. Here, the ratio breakpoint that separates the good from the, well, less good is around 1.5. The clear outlier is the Omen Smirk mask, giving us 6 poise for 3 weight, making it the clear winner of this category with a whopping ratio of exactly 2. 2nd and 3rd place are once more filled with lighter armor options like Mariah's mask, before we get a little more poise in 4th and 5th place with the Kaiden helm as well as the various soldier helmets belonging to the surcoat sets. Knight's and Fingerprint's helm share the 5th spot with 1 more poise for a little more weight, before the Crucible helm is once more the first heavier armor piece we see in 6th place. Along with these soldier related helmets and the aristocrat hat that share the diabolic 1.666 ratio but with less poise and weight overall. The Scaled and Duelist helm as well as the altered version of the Knight's Cavalry and Banished Knight's helm round out our top 10 with some heavier and higher poise headpieces, with the even heavier stuff like Veteran and Bullgoats again being even further down the list. Alright, so lastly let's check out the arm pieces. These are definitely the most consistent across the board. So we have one clear outlier with the Battlemade Menshets reaching a solid 1.818 ratio in the first place, before the 1.428 ratio for second place is shared by a pretty huge variety of arm pieces, including Knights, Zamors, the Soldier Gauntlets, as well as a bunch of other lighter stuff. I decided not to list all of it here, so it is possible that there is another piece of arm gear that would change the placing of this top 10 slightly, but in general you're looking at either 5 poise for 3.5 weight or 4 poise for 2.8. Unfortunately, once more, all the heavier arm pieces don't have as good a ratio, and so the Crucible Gauntlets are once more the first higher poise piece we find in third place, being just 0.1 weight points more efficient than the Scaled or Malformed Dragon Gauntlets. Blade's Gauntlets get the lonely 5th spot, while again multiple gauntlets like Briar's, Hoslow's and most gauntlets of the various Knights armor sets come in on 6th place with 1.282 PWR. Since so many gauntlets share the same ratio value, heavier stuff like the Tree Sentinel, Veterans and Lionel's gauntlets are actually able to reach the top 10 this time, with the 10th spot being filled by the Fire Prelate's arm piece that is now unmistakably better than the Bullgoats gauntlets, giving you the same 10 poise for 8.1 instead of 8.8 weight. So what do we learn from all of that? Well, first off, Veterans and Bullgoats armor are out of style. Veterans in specific used to have some of the best ratios across the board, but has fallen off hard with the new patch. Bullgoats is still the armor that gives you the highest poise overall, but is generally all the way at the bottom of the list when it comes to poise to weight ratio. The Crucible set on the other hand is the clear winner of this patch for high poise armors, being pretty much the first choice in any case where lighter armor doesn't cut it anymore. And apart from that, the Knights and Fingerprints armor sets are still top of the line for the medium weight range. The most poise efficient armor pieces generally come from the lightest stuff like the Aristocrat set that we can only really utilize for the lightest breakpoints, since even though they have a great ratio, they don't give a lot of poise in the first place. In any case, the altered version of most armor pieces is now usually more efficient than the unaltered form. Okay, so now that we know about the best poise to weight ratio armor pieces in a vacuum, let's talk about poise breakpoints. I'm going off of the new overview of poise damage in Elden Ring that G9 shared in his video recently, since I didn't have time yet to properly test them myself, but they seem pretty accurate anyway. First off, everything under 49 poise is pretty much useless now, as it doesn't stop anything from staggering you anymore. 55 poise is a more interesting breakpoint, since this gives you enough poise to tank through a one-handed rapier R1 among other things. 71 is another step up that covers some more attacks, although I like 75 better since it also includes one-handed R1s of heavy thrusting swords. In order to poise through power stance twin blades, katanas, spears and a bunch of other stuff, 81 is where you want to be. And lastly, going up to 91 or even 97 poise will let you withstand almost all attacks that don't do upwards of 133 poise damage anyway, where again I like the 97 breakpoint better here since it also includes a two-handed R1 of a heavy thrusting sword, which should be an attack that you'll see pretty often. To be clear, I'm not saying these are the only breakpoints you could be going for, but it seems to me that they might be the most useful ones, so 55, 75, 81 and 97 are the ones we'll look at going forward. Overall, since almost all relevant breakpoints now lie a little higher than the 61 poise a lot of people were going for pre-patch 1.07, getting decent poise has certainly become more stat expensive with this patch. This fact also makes the Bullgoats Talisman an even better option to up your poise than before, so we'll look at the optimal armor combinations for our different breakpoints both with and without Bullgoats Talisman. Just to be thorough, the Bullgoats Talisman doesn't actually increase your poise itself, rather it decreases incoming poise damage, but for the sake of this video I'm going to talk about the numbers as they are shown to us in game, since the way Bullgoats actually works doesn't really matter for us at the moment. So let's look at some optimal armor combinations for different breakpoints. Keep in mind that in some cases there are a handful of different armor combinations that yield the same optimal numbers, since multiple pieces had the same ratios in our top 10s. In the interest of time I'm only going to show off one for each breakpoint though. First off, 55 poise. Without the Bullgoats Talisman, this is what our optimal armor will look like. Getting to 55 with the Bullgoats Talisman basically lets us wear almost all the best armor pieces. In general, I would say that using Bullgoats for such a low breakpoint isn't really the best way to go, but it should be noted that with this loadout, depending on the weight of the weapon and the other talismans you're using, you are able to achieve light rolls by going up to around 30 endurance, which might make this loadout interesting for some of you. Next we jump to 75 poise. Without the Bullgoats Talisman, this is the best armor combination to reach that breakpoint. Note how we now have to start using stuff like the Tree Sentinel's armor that wasn't really among the most efficient armors in our top 10, but since we need the poise we don't really have a choice. Looking at the lightest armor combination to reach 75 with Bullgoats, we have almost the exact same loadout as we had for 55 poise with no Talisman. Only our different gauntlets save us a fraction of a weight point here. 81 poise without Bullgoats is the Omen's chest piece time to shine, making for a look that all the hipsters will say they were wearing before it was cool. But we can also utilize the Bullgoats Talisman, which of course lets us drop some of the heavier armor pieces, with the end result looking like this. You probably already have noticed how much higher the PWR on the combinations with Bullgoats is compared to those without. Which should be expected and also has to be taken with a grain of salt, since using Bullgoats Talisman of course also requires you to give up one talisman slot. But let's move on to our last breakpoint of 97. First off, without Bullgoats Talisman, this is what we get. Even with stuff like the Great Jar's Arsenal, this loadout takes a lot of points into endurance to be able to wear and still medium roll, so here I really think working with Bullgoats is the much more efficient option. The armor combination for 97 poise with Bullgoats looks almost identical to the one for 75 poise without Bullgoats, only that Blight's gauntlets again save us some weight over the Tree Sentinel's gauntlets. Interestingly, removing the talisman here brings us back down to 73 poise, which would still cover the 71 poise breakpoint. But if we were to go for 75 poise without Bullgoats, equipping the talisman then gets us to 100 poise. So this is actually a more versatile way to do things, since you then have the option to equip and unequip the talisman depending on what you're up against. Similarly, if we use the armor combination to reach 75 with Bullgoats Talisman, removing the Talisman gets us down to 56 poise, which is still above the 55 breakpoint. While equipping the Talisman with the only slightly lighter combination with 55 poise and no Bullgoats only gets us up to 73. So with the former setup you again have the option to easily switch between two breakpoints, and for now this is what seems most practical for me. What breakpoint you're going for of course depends on your taste and combat style, but at least for me I think having high poise will be very beneficial going forward. Overall I really like the changes FromSoft made to poise in PvP, since it seems to level the playing field a lot more than before. Now there's basically a lot of attacks that will just poise break you regardless of what you're wearing, while for the majority of the other attacks you can decide between either staying very lightweight without the poise to tank pretty much anything, or you are fine with a higher stat investment into endurance and get to poise through most of the medium and some of the heavier attacks. While before patch 1.07 it was more efficient in my eyes to wear heavier armor and save some points in endurance by using the Greatjaw's arsenal, now I actually feel that instead using that slot on the Bullgoats Talisman and just putting more points into endurance to achieve medium rolls is actually the better way to go. Of course, none of this takes into account how hyper armor grants you additional poise during attack animations of your heavier weapon classes, and how our breakpoints might change in regards to that if we only cared for hyper armor / active poise instead of the pure passive poise discussed here. To figure those breakpoints out, a lot more testing is still required, but since trading hits is what we are all really looking for when setting on our poise, expect a video about this topic in the future. For now, I hope this video was of some use for you. If it was, consider leaving me a like or subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. And also check out what I've done so far, like my Elden Ring PvP guide series for example. I kinda uploaded videos a little less frequently the last couple of weeks since I'm in the middle of moving, but am back in full force now with regular Elden Ring PvP content. In any case, thank you so much for watching, have a wonderful day and see you very soon!